My name is John T. Miller, but my friends affectionately call me JT. 8 years ago, I made a significant decision to leave behind the monotonous grind of corporate life and embark on a journey as an entrepreneur. Since that pivotal moment, my business has flourished beyond my expectations, turning into a success story that I take great pride in. Meanwhile, my wife Dawn has emerged as the primary income earner in our household, thriving in her professional career at a major company. She has dedicated 24 years to this organization, climbing the corporate ladder with determination and skill since just after we tied the knot. Currently, she is a prominent figure in their education sector, constantly keeping pace with the rapid advancements in technology by participating in extensive training programs every year. At the age of 46, Dawn possesses an incredible vitality and beauty that makes her appear much younger. Many would never guess she is a mother of two. Standing at 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighing a mere 118 pounds, she turns heads wherever she goes. Her commitment to health and fitness is evident as she rises with the sun each day, joining her running crew from our neighborhood to conquer 6 miles before most people are even awake. Our daughter, Emily, is a vibrant 22-year-old graduate of Florida State University. She has embraced her mother's passion for running, now teaching first graders in Naples. Like Dawn, Emily has developed a taste for my home-brewed beer and has even found a local club dedicated to it, where I join her whenever my schedule allows. Our son, Kent, is currently completing his last year at the University of Florida and is considering a position at my company. However, I have made it clear to him that he needs to gain at least 5 years of experience outside our family business before joining our team. While I enjoy brewing beer, Dawn is not a fan. She dislikes the smell of it when I am in the midst of a brewing session, which is why I have strategically timed my brewing to coincide with her work trips. As luck would have it, she is currently in Dallas, which gives me the perfect opportunity to craft an English brown ale in her absence. Life at home seems idyllic, and everything appears to be going well, so well, in fact, that I am about to confront a harsh truth that could shatter this facade. One day, while waiting to pick up Bobby, a friend from my beer club, from the airport, I noticed some of Dawn's colleagues in the area. It struck me as strange that Dawn was not among them, prompting me to call her office. I hadn't used the office phone number in ages, but I wanted to confirm her whereabouts. The voicemail I received indicated that she was supposed to be in Dallas. This revelation only deepened my confusion as I stood in the airport. After meeting up with Bobby and sharing my concerns, he suggested I reach out to Steve, another member of our beer club who happens to work as a detective. Unsure but feeling the urgency of the situation, I decided to call Steve. I laid out the entire scenario to him, explaining my unease about Dawn's inconsistent story. Steve listened carefully and shared my suspicions, indicating that he too thought there might be something amiss. He recommended that I consult a private investigator named Frank Jones to conduct a deeper inquiry into Dawn's actions. The following day, I received a phone call from Frank, and we engaged in a thorough discussion about my concerns. He was candid with me, asking whether I was truly prepared to unearth what could potentially be a messy and painful situation. He wanted to know if I had the strength to face the truth, regardless of what it might reveal, and how far back I wanted him to look into Dawn's background. This conversation weighed heavily on me, but I was resolute. I needed to know for certain if I had been deceived, no matter the cost or consequences involved. Frank assured me that he would assign someone to surveil Dawn and would conduct a thorough investigation into her training schedules as well as check with instructors from the airport incident. In the meantime, he advised me to take a low-key approach and do some sleuthing of my own at home. Though I had no specific idea of what I was searching for, I started my investigation in our master bedroom. I rummaged through Dawn's dresser without finding anything out of the ordinary, which led me to her closet next, filled to the brim with boxes. I decided to search the bathroom first, but again, found nothing significant. Returning to the closet, I meticulously examined her clothing, shoe boxes, and other belongings, but my efforts yielded no clues. Nothing indicated a hidden affair or anything suspicious. It felt like an overwhelming task, akin to searching for a needle in a haystack, especially since I didn't even know if there was a needle to find. After exhausting all options, including the guest room, den, garage, and attic, I felt no closer to uncovering the truth. Eventually, Frank arrived equipped with an array of spy equipment. We set up cameras and recording devices throughout the house and transformed Dawn's car into a tracking unit. With these measures in place, I braced myself for a reality that might redefine everything I thought I knew about my life and my marriage. After a long, arduous day, I finally settled down with a refreshing drink in hand, ready to absorb the details that Frank was about to share with me. As he filled me in on the situation, I learned that Dawn's teaching assignments were scattered across varying locations and timelines, sometimes comprising a hectic 3-day schedule, while other times extending to a full 5 days. The class she recently taught in Dallas was a brief 3-day commitment. Interestingly, her colleagues, Tom, Paul, and Bev, had all managed to fly back home on Wednesday evening without any complications or drama, leaving me to wonder why Dawn's situation seemed markedly different. Despite the circumstances, Dawn was supposedly only responsible for the teaching aspect and not burdened with any of the more tedious classroom tasks. As I sat there, frustration boiling inside me like a pressure cooker, I recalled a piece of wisdom my father had once imparted about the importance of maintaining composure in stressful situations. However, facing the reality that Dawn had been spinning a web of lies was challenging. I was resolute in my determination to confront her and ensure that she faced the consequences of her actions. Further complicating matters, our search for a new house yielded nothing but empty results, except for one peculiar detail: Dawn's consistent urgency to wash her clothes immediately upon returning home. This odd behavior raised red flags for us, prompting Frank and me to devise a plan. Our strategy was straightforward yet bold. Frank would intercept Dawn at the airport and retrieve her luggage while I set about sabotaging the washing machine to delay its operation. With Frank heading out, he promised that a mutual friend in Dallas was discreetly keeping tabs on Dawn and would relay any pertinent information swiftly. The anxiety of sleeping in our shared bed was unbearable, so I made the decision to crash in Kent's room instead, tossing and turning the whole night in restless sleep. The next day, I returned to my regular routine, heading to the office in an attempt to clear my mind. Around lunchtime, Frank buzzed me, and we arranged a meeting at my place. He arrived at 2 p.m., burdened with files and a sense of urgency. The investigative work from the Dallas detective had yielded a comprehensive report, complete with photographs that began to complicate matters further. As I braced myself for the revelations, Frank presented me with a striking photo of a dinner gathering featuring 6 individuals, 3 men and 3 women, each in pairs at the table. He asked if I recognized anyone present. I studied the image intently and, to my dismay, identified the only familiar face as Dawn's. Frank continued to sift through the files, revealing close-up shots of the attendees. A fleeting sense of familiarity washed over me with one of the men, yet I couldn't quite place him. Frank then unveiled information that sounded straight out of a spy thriller. The hotel had strategically installed cameras in the hallways, capturing every movement of this group. The photos showcased the entire dinner party as they exited the restaurant, stuffing themselves into an elevator, and the reality hit me like a freight train when I saw them disembark on the same floor. The women entered one room, while the men headed into an adjacent one. As Friday dawned, another image revealed 2 women leaving one room and 2 men exiting the other, followed by the whole group breezing through the hotel lobby and out the front doors. They appeared to be nothing more than colleagues or perhaps longtime friends, with no outward indication of anything suspicious. After a casual meal at a nearby restaurant, they each settled their tabs before returning to the hotel to collect their belongings and check out. Frank's expression turned serious as he questioned whether I truly wanted to know the complete truth without any filters. Without hesitation, I urged him to proceed. He opened another file, explaining that the Dallas team had conducted thorough investigations in the hotel rooms after the guests had vacated. They filmed everything and found significant evidence, a comprehensive mess in both rooms indicating a night of debauchery. The situation became more alarming as Frank detailed how all 4 beds had been used, with a lingering scent that could only be attributed to a wild night. While we awaited confirmation from lab tests, a gut feeling told me that Dawn was far more involved than she had ever let on. The realization that the woman I had married could betray me in such a profound way felt like a crushing blow. Facing the inevitable, Dawn was due back that evening, and our immediate course of action was to sabotage the washing machine to prevent her from destroying any potential evidence. The act of cutting the machine's wires provided a curious sense of satisfaction, a distraction from the simmering anger that threatened to engulf me. Back in the kitchen, Frank was busy collecting DNA samples, mine and the children's, as he rifled through Dawn's hairbrush, casually requesting hair strands from the kids as well. The tension in the air was palpable, and I braced myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. When he requests hair from the children, an unsettling chill courses through me, a visceral reaction that signals something far more sinister than mere curiosity. Is it possible he is merely going through the motions, checking off items on a meticulous list? Yet the notion that these children might somehow cease to be mine, that their very essence could be stripped away, introduces an unprecedented layer of betrayal that feels unbearable. We have meticulously preserved baby hair clippings from each of our kids, surely just one from each would suffice for whatever twisted purpose he envisions. But Frank has concocted a different scheme altogether. He intends to manipulate the situation at the airport, orchestrating a delay for Dawn by having her luggage mysteriously go missing. This tactical move will buy us precious time, wrapping her in the frustration of reporting a lost bag and thus allowing me the mental space I so desperately need for what lies ahead. The real act of performance is about to unfold, and I find myself riddled with anxiety. Can I embrace Dawn, kiss her tenderly, and sit through her seemingly mundane stories without revealing the turmoil that churns beneath my facade? Will I be able to take her out, share a bed with her, all the while burdened by the knowledge of what I suspect? This charade may need to endure for months as Frank's team works to uncover the hidden truths about her life. The question looms large over me: can I maintain this pretense? Can I live with the lies, the deceit, all in pursuit of a greater truth? I assured Frank that I would go through with it. I must, for the truth has become the only thing that truly matters now, regardless of the toll it takes on me. Frank's gears were clearly turning. He was plotting something intricate. He proposed that I embark on a business trip, a move designed to throw Dawn off the scent, perhaps even to catch her in the act should she be engaging in dubious activities. Contemplating this idea, it suddenly clicked into place. I could pay a visit to a long-standing client in St. Louis, informing Dawn I would be away from Monday until Thursday, making the trip sound routine and unremarkable. When I questioned the necessity of such a journey, Frank laid out his reasoning: with me out of town, Dawn may feel unencumbered, liberated enough to slip up if she had been partaking in any secret extracurricular activities. As we've been unable to monitor her office, Frank suggested bugging something she always carries. My mind raced through possibilities until it finally landed on her briefcase. While it may not have been the most ideal option, it was certainly a viable one. Frank passed me a small listening device to plant later that evening. Just before he departed, he left me with one last task: check Dawn's underwear for any indications of infidelity. Stay cool, he reminded me, a sentiment that felt like walking a tightrope suspended over a deep abyss. As I stood on the deck, nursing a porter, I attempted to piece together anything else that might have seemed amiss about Dawn, aside from her laundry habits. Nothing surfaced until, just as I was about to head inside, Frank called with a significant update. They had managed to locate Dawn's luggage, and it was on its way to the lab for analysis. Keep your head, he instructed, and that simple phrase became my lifeline as I prepared for the evening ahead. Dawn arrived home visibly exhausted from her trip, her frustration boiling over at the inconvenience of her lost luggage, especially since it included a couple of brand new pairs of slacks. Yet amidst her irritation, she still mustered the energy for a loving embrace and the familiar "I missed you" routine that warmed my heart. Once she retreated for a bath, I discreetly secured the bug in her briefcase and attempted to unwind with some television, but my mind was ensnared, replaying her arrival, searching for any subtle hints that could betray her hidden secrets. She appeared genuinely thrilled to be home, making my performance feel all the more strained and demanding. I knew that I needed to excel in this charade, otherwise, she would see through me effortlessly. Pushing those thoughts aside, I prepared for bed, where we would inevitably end up intertwined in each other's arms, a customary ritual following her trips away. By Saturday morning, Dawn was still fast asleep, likely free from the burden of laundry duties, thanks to her missing luggage. I found myself sneakily examining her underwear as if I were some sort of voyeur, searching for any telltale signs of betrayal, but nothing stood out. The items looked just like any other day's wash. After my shower, I initiated the morning routine by brewing coffee and perusing the newspaper, doing my best to maintain a sense of normalcy. Dawn eventually floated into the kitchen, exuding contentment and relaxation, and I greeted her with charm, presenting her with coffee and breakfast. We exchanged jokes about her luggage, and I chuckled along, attempting to keep the atmosphere light. Once breakfast was over, I stepped outside to tackle my to-do list, continuing this pretense that everything was perfectly ordinary. A short while later, Dawn announced that she was heading to the store, and I casually informed her that I would be busy working on a beer transfer. It was crucial to uphold our everyday routine, even if it felt as if everything was delicately balanced on the edge of a precipice. Dinner at our usual Italian restaurant felt like a scripted scene from a film where the protagonists maintained their composure despite the chaos simmering beneath the surface. We chatted about the trip, crafting an illusion of normalcy even as I remained hyper-aware of the tension cloaked in the shadows of our lives. Pretending that everything was normal, we engaged in light conversation about our recent trip, the upcoming business run I had scheduled in St. Louis, and the issue of my lost luggage. Dawn mentioned with a hint of amusement that she half hoped it would remain lost, as that would provide her with the perfect excuse to indulge in shopping for new clothes. Among the items she expressed interest in were some new slacks that she had found particularly appealing. I played along, enthusiastically discussing my latest home brewing venture, drawing on the details of our dinner and the enjoyable atmosphere we had created around the table. As the evening progressed, it felt like any other routine night prior to a business trip. However, the long drive to St. Louis provided me with ample opportunity to reflect, and despite my usual focus on work-related matters, my thoughts were predominantly centered on Dawn. During the drive, I reached out to Frank, providing him with updates about my weekend and attempting to gauge his thoughts on the situation that seemed to be unfolding. He had no new information, but assured me he would keep me informed. As the miles and hours continued to roll by, I found myself craving Frank's honest opinion. He had a reputation for not sugarcoating the truth, and alongside Joe in Dallas, they both had come to the conclusion that Dawn was deeply involved, suggesting that this affair was likely long-standing, not just a fleeting encounter. Their familiarity with each other was evident in the way they interacted, their casual demeanor betraying the depth of their connection. Frank shared that outside the confines of hotel rooms, the 6 individuals involved maintained a facade of friendship, but once the doors closed, their interactions transformed dramatically. This ongoing charade was what hurt the most. It was an elaborate act, and I had been completely oblivious to it. Frank's final piece of advice was clear: I needed to make a decision regarding Dawn and how I wanted to address this entire mess. With that motivation in mind, I reached out to my lawyer, Mike, asking for the contact details of the best divorce attorney available. I updated Mike on the situation, and he informed me that Dave Ford would be in touch shortly. It was surreal how quickly life could shift. One moment I was sharing laughs over homebrewed beer and discussing dinner plans, and the next I was inquiring about divorce attorneys regarding a marriage I once believed was unbreakable. After checking into my hotel in St. Louis, I made the customary call home to Dawn, reassuring her of my safe arrival. To her, everything appeared normal, yet beneath this surface, I was secretly maneuvering the pieces of a very different scenario. I touched base with Fred regarding our golf plans, striving to maintain the semblance of an ordinary business trip. Later that evening, Frank called to check in. I conveyed to him that I was aware of the strong reputations he and Dave Ford had in their fields, and that I was preparing myself for whatever lay ahead. This was no longer about being defensive. I was ready to confront the reality of my situation. The following day was a whirlwind of manicured green fairways with Fred, providing a temporary distraction from my thoughts. On Wednesday, Frank's midday call caught me at a moment when I had an open schedule and was ready to head home the next morning. When I finally had the chance to speak with Dave Ford, I briefed him on the details of my circumstances. He expressed admiration for the strategy one had been employing and acknowledged the thoroughness of Frank's investigation. The pivotal question from Dave revolved around my intentions, which I presented straightforwardly. If Dawn was indeed cheating, I would file for divorce. However, I needed to gather a full picture from Frank's findings to determine just how far I wanted to push back against Dawn and her accomplices. Dave outlined the legal landscape for me, explaining that in Georgia, a no-fault divorce could be executed swiftly and at a lower cost, particularly since our children were already grown. He added that pursuing adultery charges likely wouldn't provide any significant advantage in court. This information was a lot to digest, and I realized that I needed time to weigh my options on how best to approach the divorce, contemplating whether to take an aggressive stance or to adopt a more reserved path. The conversation with Dave served as a stark reminder of the emotional and legal maze I was about to navigate. As I sat in my hotel room, I was taken aback by the unexpected arrival of Frank and Steve. The gravity of Frank's expression left little doubt that something significant was about to be revealed. Having Steve present felt like having a lifeline, as I braced myself for the news that was about to unfold. When Frank finally spoke, his words felt like a heavy blow. The lab results were in, confirming Dawn's active participation in the sordid hotel escapade. The evidence was damning. Each woman involved, including Dawn, had been with all 3 men, and in that moment, my heart sank as the reality of the situation became painfully clear. My heart sank as Frank revealed the devastating truth about Dawn's deceit. He explained that they had matched the DNA from strands of Dawn's hair discovered at the crime scene to the evidence collected from the beds. A heavy silence enveloped me, leaving me reeling, lost in a cacophony of thoughts that echoed in my mind. I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal being laid before me. But it was Frank's next revelation that pierced my heart even deeper than the first. With a hesitant tone, he informed me that neither of my children was biologically mine. The scream that erupted from my throat was not merely an expression of shock, it was the culmination of 24 years filled with trust, love, and cherished memories, all shattering in an instant. As I paced back and forth, consumed by rage and disbelief, I barely registered Frank and Steve's presence beside me. My previously perfect world had not just collapsed, it had been obliterated completely. A heavy weight settled upon me as I grappled with the reality that every plan, every next step I envisioned for my life now felt utterly insignificant against the backdrop of a lie that had stretched across more than 2 decades. Struck by disbelief and overwhelmed by the storm of betrayal, I became caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The revelations regarding Kent, Emily, and the decades-long deceit orchestrated by Dawn constituted not just a grave misfortune, but a seismic shift in every aspect of my life. The shock gradually gave way to an intense cascade of emotions, ranging from disbelief to a steely resolve. Frank's decision to deliver this news in person was undoubtedly the right one. Steve's presence served a purpose beyond mere support. It acted as a necessary anchor to keep me grounded amid the chaotic aftermath of the storm that had just swept through my existence. Time seemed to halt as we began to discuss my options. With guidance from Steve and Frank, I concentrated on the path forward, determined that this betrayal would come at a severe cost to all those involved. Sleep eluded me that night, yet the company of Frank and Steve prevented me from sinking into despair. Instead, it allowed me to focus on what needed to be done. My decision began to crystallize in my mind. I would ensure that every individual who played a role in this deception would face consequences. My divorce from Dawn would not be a quiet retreat into anonymity. It would serve as a declaration, a public exposure of her duplicity. While this approach would inevitably drag my own pain into the open, it would also illuminate the years of lies that had masqueraded as my life, highlighting the depth of the betrayal I had suffered. Initially, the idea of pursuing a no-fault divorce in Georgia seemed like a swift means to sever ties. However, in light of the revelations, it felt insufficient, almost too gentle to address the sheer gravity of Dawn's deceit. The straightforward process that typically involved waiting a month and then dividing what had once been a shared life now seemed inadequate. The evidence we were gathering would fuel a very different kind of conclusion, one where the truth would not be buried under the guise of mutual consent but laid bare for all to witness. Faced with the stark reality of Dawn's infidelity, I found myself torn between the raw, visceral satisfaction of pursuing a long, drawn-out court battle for adultery and the more pragmatic approach of a straightforward no-fault divorce. The desire to confront Dawn and her accomplices in a courtroom setting clashed with the more cautious advice from Steve, Frank, and Dave, who all advocated for the latter route. They proposed a strategy that promised efficiency and reduced financial strain, suggesting the potential to expose Dawn's infidelity without the complications of an extended legal struggle. This notion began to tip the scales back in favor of a pragmatic solution. Back in Atlanta, we regrouped in Frank's conference room, laying out the information we had gathered. We pinpointed what still needed to be uncovered and strategized on the most impactful route for retribution. It was in that room that I learned Dawn had not made a mistake during my trip to St. Louis. Instead, the consistent behavior of the group I had begun to refer to as the Gang of Six revealed a much deeper pattern of deceit. Their systematic betrayals included booking connecting rooms and various combinations of members attending these clandestine getaways, a well-orchestrated conspiracy that spanned years. My frustration boiled over at the thought of their deception, and I felt a burning need to press Frank for a deeper investigation into their lives. I needed comprehensive profiles on each member of this group, their marital statuses, children, paternity matters, employment details, and residences, a complete dossier on every one of them. The plan was forming in my mind, a strategy to dismantle the facade of their secret lives in the same ruthless manner they had deconstructed mine. This pursuit was no longer just about legal retribution. It had evolved into a mission focused on exposing a charade that had persisted for nearly 25 years. In the midst of this turmoil, an audacious idea took shape in my mind, to reveal Dawn's infidelity on our 25th wedding anniversary. Frank, who was well acquainted with her work schedule, was in the process of setting up a plan to spy on her, gathering evidence that would ultimately bring her deceptive life into the harsh light of reality. The situation before me was precarious and fraught with emotion. I understood that the evidence I had gathered might not be credible in a courtroom setting, yet my need to uncover the truth was paramount. The timing for the confrontation could not have been more perfectly aligned. Dawn was set to lead a class in Orlando, scheduled to conclude just before our anniversary, a day I had been preparing to use as the ultimate moment of revelation. I had informed everyone that this would be a significant occasion, but what I had planned was not a celebration marked by cake and festivities. It was a decisive turning point for me. No longer would I remain the oblivious husband. The time had come to show Dawn and her accomplices the consequences of their betrayal. I was prepared to reverse the roles and force them to experience the emotional turmoil they had inflicted upon me. Recent discussions with Frank in Dave's office had revealed startling revelations about a clandestine group, dubbed the Gang of Six. This collective, consisting of Dawn and her co-workers, had been expertly maneuvering around their deception for more than 2 decades, operating under the guise of innocent camaraderie since they began working together. Their ability to maintain a facade of normalcy was disturbingly impressive, as they had perfected the art of a secret life. A noteworthy incident occurred during a work-related class in Washington, D.C., where Frank's team unraveled their well-crafted scheme. Dawn and a man named Henry had booked adjacent hotel rooms, demonstrating a level of cunning that kept them off the radar of suspicion. They had meticulously orchestrated their encounters, ensuring they did not raise any eyebrows. They dispersed throughout the hotel and maintained a public persona that was as ordinary as any other working professionals. Yet, when night fell, they would stealthily retreat to their hidden rooms, returning to their own quarters before dawn broke, effectively evading detection. Their facade extended beyond mere physical meetings. During daylight hours, they engaged in seemingly innocuous conversations about mundane topics, where they dined, what activities their children were involved in, and anecdotes about their spouses. Little did anyone know that this group of individuals, who appeared to share nothing more than professional rapport, were entangled in a web of secret affairs that had persisted for an astonishing 24 years. Their intricate deception was notable, but Frank's team was resolute in its commitment to uncovering the truth. They collaborated with the hotel cleaning staff to gather irrefutable evidence. The aftermath of their nocturnal rendezvous left a trail of incrimination. The hotel rooms bore witness to their betrayals, as the sheets, tainted with unmistakable DNA evidence, painted a clear picture of indiscretion. The implications of their actions became painfully apparent as the evidence revealed George and Chuck's unforeseen paternity concerning 2 children, Emily and Kent. The genetic markers found amidst the collected samples confirmed their roles as fathers, shattering the carefully constructed illusions of their personal lives. George C. Thomas, residing in Richmond, Virginia, with his wife and adult children, was on the brink of a life-altering realization that he had an additional daughter. Concurrently, Chuck, enjoying a seemingly stable marriage in Columbia, South Carolina, was about to confront the shocking revelation of an extra son named Henry, who lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, alongside his twins. As they approached long-standing anniversaries, Joy's nearing her silver anniversary in Miami and Catherine's family rooted in Knoxville, their lives mirrored the facade I had maintained, concealing the emptiness that lay beneath the surface. For over 23 years, the gang of 6 had managed to keep their true lives hidden, presenting an illusion of marital bliss that was now at the brink of collapse. Watching my own world unravel served as a mere precursor to the chaos that was poised to engulf them. As the investigation progressed, the complexity of the situation grew. Questions began to arise concerning the true parentage of Joyce's and Catherine's children. Given the circumstances, it was increasingly probable that the fathers of those children were also entwined in this clandestine network. Frank was under pressure, racing against time to unearth the truth, as the clock ticked down to the impending confrontation. The atmosphere in Dave's office was electric with tension, as we prepared to address the bombshells that were about to be revealed. It soon became clear that Dawn's business trip to Orlando was more than it appeared. It served as a precursor to our anniversary, a day she seemed determined to disregard, showing little to no concern for the 25 years we had spent together. My initial shock at the circumstances quickly morphed into a steely resolve, focusing on the harsh truths that had emerged about our interconnected relationships. The unsettling realization dawned that Henry was, in fact, the biological father of both Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son, significantly complicating an already precarious situation. George and Chuck had both fathered daughters with Catherine, yet Joyce stood apart as the only one who had a child with her husband. This distinction shone a single thread of fidelity amidst a complex web of infidelity that marked the relationships around them. After absorbing all of this intricate and painful information, I began to cultivate a cold sense of determination within myself. The act of pretending to be a loving husband while secretly plotting Dawn's downfall felt akin to engaging in a dark and twisted game. I had already ventured through the depths of sadness and anger, and now I was committed to a more calculated and strategic approach. With just a bit more time, I would be able to unleash the truth like a bombshell, an act that felt disturbingly satisfying. To maintain appearances while mirroring Dawn's own deceitful behavior was a role I had adapted to with surprising ease. For a staggering 24 years, she had successfully maintained her facade, so I convinced myself that I could sustain my own performance for a few more months. I had never considered myself the type to engage in such treachery, but the circumstances had turned the tables in a way I never imagined possible. As Frank's crew prepared for similar surveillance in San Diego, mimicking their operations in Washington, my primary focus remained fixed on the impending events in Orlando. That location was where I intended to expose Dawn and her accomplices to the fullest, revealing the extent of their actions. Her decision to remain away from home on our anniversary was a clear indication of her lack of regard for our relationship. The bold plan I devised for Orlando involved making a surprise appearance as an instructor on Wednesday, ensuring that the truth would unfold dramatically in front of an audience. As the date approached, Dave and his team diligently prepared all the necessary legal groundwork for the impending confrontation. I, along with Dave, Frank, and Steve, meticulously reviewed every detail, ensuring that we were ready for any unforeseen developments. Frank's team would be present as well, keeping close watch on Dawn's circle of 6 for any last-minute information that could benefit our cause. I was gearing up for a showdown that transcended merely exposing Dawn and her associates. It was about making an impactful statement that would resonate deeply. I was prepared to take a decisive step forward, ready to reshape the narrative, while they remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break upon them. On the Saturday following Dawn's departure, I took the initiative to contact the spouses of her inner circle, spinning an elaborate tale about organizing a surprise for our 25th anniversary in Orlando. I extended invitations for them to join the celebration, assuring them that all expenses were covered on my end. I also reached out to Kent and Emily, inviting them to participate as well, emphasizing that we would be surprising their mother on the coming Tuesday night. When the moment arrived, I sat down with them and revealed the painful truth about Dawn and the affair, disclosing that I was not their biological father. The revelation stirred a whirlwind of emotions as we all cried and embraced. They had numerous questions, and I answered every one of them without reservation. It was a moment of raw honesty, and I made them promise not to disclose any details to Dawn about our forthcoming plans. Looking each of them in the eye, I expressed my desire for them to be present during the confrontation with their mother, while making it clear that I would not pressure them into attending. I cautioned them that the truth would be difficult to bear, especially since the news would likely hit the headlines back home. I would be addressing some harsh realities about Dawn and her associates, but I reassured them that it would not alter the love I held for them. In my heart, they would always be my children. With tears reflecting the turmoil inside him, Kent asked if there was any chance of forgiving Dawn. Meanwhile, Emily inquired why we couldn't simply try to mend our family's fractures through counseling. It was a struggle to remain composed, but I took a deep breath and urged them to place themselves in my shoes, to imagine that the person they loved most had been perpetually dishonest with them. This exercise aimed to help them understand my inability to simply forgive and move past the betrayal. Ultimately, I made it clear that the decision to attend the confrontation was entirely theirs. I asserted my unending love for them, no matter the outcome. In a heartfelt attempt to illustrate my point, I challenged Kent and Emily to envision a perfect life filled with joy, a scenario where everything appeared flawless, a rewarding job, wonderful children, and all the cherished family activities like soccer practices and vacations. They would feel immense gratitude for a life that seemed to reach its peak happiness. Then, I asked them to imagine an alternate scenario where their spouse was not by their side, but rather in a hotel room with others. Instead of enjoying leisure activities, they were engrossed in a card game, experiencing elation not out of genuine affection but from a different source entirely. I turned to Kent and questioned whether he truly believed his wife loved him, then directed my attention to Emily, asking her to reflect on how she would feel if her husband were among those in that compromising situation. This stark contrast left them visibly upset, making it clear that the gravity of the situation was settling in. Their distress was palpable, and I noticed the tears glistening in their eyes, a clear indication of the emotional weight of the revelation they were grappling with. I allowed them a moment to process their feelings, understanding the gravity of the situation. After ensuring they had time to absorb the initial shock, I escalated the conversation to a more challenging topic. This situation was not a fleeting occurrence, as depicted in movies, rather, it was a harsh reality that had been unfolding for 24 long years. I informed them that, every few months, this pattern repeated itself, and I had video evidence stored on my laptop to confirm it. I pointed out that, even as we spoke, just under a mile away, another installment of these encounters was being filmed. I posed a provocative question about how they would feel if they discovered that they were not the biological fathers of their children or if Emily's husband had fathered children with another woman. The discomfort of this notion was evident on their faces. I proceeded to explain that the person they believed loved them was intentionally choosing to forego precious family time in favor of indulging in these secretive escapades. It was an overwhelming amount of information for them to process, and I wanted to ensure they fully understood the impossibility of returning to the way things had been prior to this revelation, and why the idea of counseling was not an option for me. This was not merely a case of infidelity, it represented a concealed existence that their mother had been leading. I described in detail how Dawn would often extend her trips by 2 additional days purely for ZX, subsequently requiring an entire day to recuperate before rejoining her family. I asked them to consider the implications of such actions, what level of love, respect, and regard did that demonstrate toward her own family. The atmosphere grew thick with emotion as I witnessed Kent struggle with his own tears, acknowledging for the first time the full scope of the situation. He reluctantly admitted that he had never viewed it from this perspective and began to realize that he would not want his wife to treat him in a similar manner. The emotional toll this had taken on me was becoming more apparent to him. "I love you, Dad," he managed to say, his voice still shaky and uncertain, caught between the urge for confrontation and the desire to shield himself from the fallout. Emily, on the other hand, displayed a fierce resolve. She was filled with anger and ready to stand by my side, urging Kent to do the same. "Mom chose them over us," she declared, and in that moment, clarity seemed to wash over Kent as he began to piece everything together. I was struck by Emily's passionate stance and determination, which filled me with immense pride and affection for both of my children. Eager to know my strategy for the following day, Emily listened intently as I laid out my plan to invite the spouses of the Gang of Six to what they would believe to be a 25th wedding anniversary celebration. This gathering was designed to be a shocking revelation for them, one where I intended to present all the evidence for their scrutiny. I casually mentioned the existence of half-siblings, hinting that they might be interested in meeting them someday. My objective was to bring Dawn's affair to light in a manner that would maximize the impact and compel her, along with her associates, to confront the ramifications of their actions directly from their own families. The following day, the other spouses from the group convened at the hotel where we shared a pleasant lunch, fostering connections among ourselves. At 2 p.m., with Kent by my side, we made our way to the location where Dawn's class was being held. Awaiting us in the hotel lobby were a lawyer affiliated with Dave's firm, a private investigator from Frank's team, and a videographer tasked with documenting the impending confrontation. At 2:30 p.m., a florist delivered 25 red roses, which Emily and the other women admired, though I could sense Emily's heightened adrenaline and readiness for what was to unfold. I reminded her to maintain composure, as I was in charge of orchestrating the day's events. As we approached the meeting rooms at 2:45 p.m., Emily's enthusiasm was palpable while Kent remained close to her side, the other spouses buzzing with anticipation. At exactly 3 p.m., I entered Dawn's classroom, roses in hand, with the camera operator, John, trailing behind me. The moment Dawn's gaze fell upon me, her complexion mirrored the vibrant red of the roses. I seized the moment with a light-hearted joke, drawing laughter from the room. Dawn, regaining her composure, introduced me to her class as JT, her devoted husband. Standing before the class, I made a point to establish eye contact with every member of the gang of 6, who were strategically spaced apart to deflect any suspicion. Turning my attention back to Dawn, I commenced my speech, highlighting the significance of the day due to our approaching 25th wedding anniversary. However, before I could complete my thoughts, Emily and the rest of the surprise group erupted into the room, the atmosphere shifting dramatically. A photographer captured the moment, freezing the look of shock on Dawn's face and the sheer panic sweeping across her affair group. I couldn't help but wear a broad smile, knowing that the truth was about to unravel before all those present. I smiled broadly as I watched the scene unfold before my eyes. Emily, filled with a fierce sense of righteous fury, was taking charge of the situation, asserting herself as she introduced Dawn to the spouses of her affair partners. The energy in the room was palpable, and I knew that this moment would be significant. I continued with my planned announcement, highlighting the upcoming company anniversary, making sure to include that Dawn and her colleagues had all started their journey at the same time. To add to the spectacle, I put on a grand performance, with JN capturing every critical moment on video. I encouraged the guests to speak on camera later, allowing the excitement to build. Taking a moment to breathe, I attempted to calm my pounding heart, absorbing the bewildered and frightened expressions on the faces of the gang of 6. The stage was set, and I could feel the tension in the air, almost palpable as it approached the time for the grand reveal. With a loud voice, I called out, "George, Henry, Chuck, Joyce, Catherine, please come up and join us." The group made their way to the front of the room, the rest of the attendees applauded, and Emily stood by my side, her readiness evident as we prepared for what was to come. With determination, I took Emily by the arm and guided her over to George. I then said, "Emily, I'd like to introduce you to George Thomas, your biological father." The reaction was immediate. Dawn turned pale, and George's wife looked at me in disbelief, demanding that I repeat what I had just said. I reiterated my statement, emphasizing that George was indeed Emily's biological father. George, now finding his voice, questioned how I could be so certain. I extended my hand to the attorney, who placed 3 critical documents within it. Turning to George, I handed him the first document, explaining that it was a request for a court-ordered paternity test. Passing him the second document, I declared, "I am suing you for 21 years of back child support and emotional trauma." Finally, I presented George with a copy of the lawsuit I was filing against his employer, asserting their failure to enforce the morality clause in his employment contract. I assured him that I already possessed DNA results from an independent lab that confirmed his biological connection to Dawn's daughter, Emily, and that the court-ordered test was merely a formality. Addressing George's wife, I added, "Don't worry, I have copies of all the evidence for you to utilize as you see fit." The classroom erupted into chaos as the other spouses, who had been completely unaware of the true purpose of the gathering, reacted in shock. Despite the turmoil around me, I found a sense of enjoyment in the unfolding drama. Kent surprised me by stepping forward, standing tall and nodding in acknowledgement, and I felt an immense sense of pride for him at that moment. We moved on to Chuck, where I introduced him to his biological father in the same manner as I had with Emily. "Kent, I'd like to introduce you to your biological father, Charles Kent Nixon." The room fell silent as the weight of Chuck's middle name settled over the audience. In the hush that followed, the attorney once again handed me some documents, which I went through with Chuck in the same manner as I had with George. Chuck's wife also requested copies of the evidence for her own use, indicating the gravity of the situation. Things calmed down somewhat as most people initially thought the drama was limited to Dawn and her 2 children. However, I had another bombshell prepared for the rest of the attendees. With Dawn crying in her chair, I captured everyone's attention once again. "This is not what you expected when I walked in," I said, "but hang on, because we're just getting started." The room fell silent, holding its breath in anticipation. I laid it all out for them, detailing the Gang of Six and their 24-year history of hookups during these classes. I systematically broke down the parentage of all the children involved, leaving no doubt about the intricate web of lies and deceit that had been woven over the years. As the reality of the situation hit everyone in the room, chaos erupted once more. I chose not to delve into all the messy details, but all the legal documents were distributed, and the spouses received copies to confront the truth. The Gang of Six was faced with their indiscretions right then and there. When I handed Dawn the divorce papers, I declared firmly that we were done, stating clearly, no calls, no coming home, and no attempts to see me after this. After everything settled down and I was back in my hotel room, I reflected on how it all unfolded. Emily's desire to confront her biological father immediately had disrupted my carefully planned script. In the end, it didn't matter. I had succeeded in making the Gang of Six aware that their secrets were no longer hidden. I successfully informed the group known as the Gang of Six that their deceitful actions had been brought to light, effectively exposing them in front of everyone. This act of revelation not only embarrassed them but also marked a significant turning point in my life, one that had been fraught with difficulty for far too long. Although the day was painful for me, filled with emotional turmoil, it also signified the start of a new chapter, one where I could finally begin to move forward. After serving them with the necessary legal documents, I left them to confront the wrath of their furious partners, which left me with a sense of empowerment and relief. I began to feel an uplift in my spirits as I took these steps toward reclaiming my life. However, just as I was starting to regain some stability, a knock on my door brought me face to face with Emily and Kent. They had been preoccupied with caring for their mother but had now come to offer me comfort in my time of need. Their arrival was marked by warm hugs and heartfelt words, demonstrating their unwavering support during a challenging period. Emily, despite her feelings of anger and hurt, exhibited a newfound strength in her demeanor. With determination in her eyes, she informed me of her decision to take Dawn home for a while. This choice, made despite the ongoing turmoil, highlighted her strong sense of love and duty toward her mother. In this moment, I recognized an inspiring transformation in Emily. She was no longer merely a victim of circumstance. Instead, she emerged as a strong-willed individual who could handle the responsibility of looking after Dawn, giving me confidence that her mother would be in capable hands. Kent, on the other hand, expressed his own pain alongside his affections as he requested to accompany me on the drive back. His presence served as an anchor amidst the chaos, and we sought a semblance of normalcy in our shared experiences. Emily left to be with her mother, reassuring me of her continued love and support, while Kent decided to stay behind. We shared a few beers, discussing our feelings and trying to navigate the uncertain terrain of our new reality. It became a bonding moment between father and son, as we sought to find our footing in this transformed landscape. Fast forward 5 years, and the aftermath of exposing the Gang of Six has been profound. Their world collapsed, resulting in job losses and the unraveling of their marriages. Each attempt they made to rebuild their lives was often thwarted by their past, which seemed to shadow them relentlessly. They now find themselves in a cycle of trying to mend relationships with their children, but reports indicate that this is a challenging and lengthy journey. Their ex-spouses remain largely uninterested in rekindling any connection, aside from occasional financial obligations. In the wake of the revelations and the fallout, I could no longer reside in our old house, surrounded by memories that felt too heavy. Instead, I checked into a hotel and began the search for a new place to call home. Kent returned to Atlanta with me initially, but he soon carved out his own path in Dallas, where he excelled in his career and embraced life anew. Although he has distanced himself from Dawn, choosing to communicate with her only sporadically over the phone, Emily has maintained a closer relationship with him, ensuring they stay connected. The consequences of the Gang of Six actions have indeed been tough, especially for the younger generation. Trust issues have lingered, and I often ponder whether Kent will ever settle down and form a lasting relationship. Meanwhile, Emily has taken it upon herself to manage her relationship with Dawn, refusing to accept any excuses or lies that might emerge. The experience has led us all to seek solace in others who have faced similar challenges, leading to unexpected connections. The children have even developed a bond with their half-siblings, planning a reunion in Nashville that promises to be a significant step toward healing and reconciliation. Interestingly, Emily and Kent have discovered that their names are linked to their biological fathers, which only added another layer of complexity to an already tumultuous situation. Their relationships with Dawn have become strained, characterized by tension and uncertainty. As for me, I have moved on from the past chapters of my life, settling my divorce with Dawn swiftly. She retained the house, while I ensured that Emily and Kent were provided for with a trust funded by the money I received from George and Chuck. Although I had no interest in their financial contributions, I wanted them to genuinely feel the repercussions of their actions. As I navigate this new phase of my life, I have started dating again, seeking companionship and the possibility of building a future with someone new. I remain optimistic about love, holding on to the hope that one day I will have grandchildren to spoil and nurture. Life is a relentless journey that does not pause for anyone, and despite the heartache I have endured, I understand the importance of continuing to move forward. Emily and Kent require my support just as much as I need to be there for them. Life progresses, and so do I. I look ahead with anticipation for what lies in store, always remembering that lessons learned, betrayal never leads to anything good, and retribution ultimately follows those who wrong others.